Well, you've got it tuned into the Zealous Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week I've got Bruce Lombard on the show. He is in Pennsylvania on the edge of Penn State campus. So he's working with collegiate level football players, but also gets hired for NFL work. And what he does is work on hand speed with football players through MMA, boxing, wrestling, and a whole bunch more. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Bruce and I are going to be both presenting at the NSCA National Conference this July 12th and 15th. So we're going to give you a little sneak peek as to what he's going to be talking about. Enjoy the show. Well, Bruce, thanks for coming on Zealous. I'm looking forward to this. I've got a few other presenters that are going to Las Vegas in July for the NSCA National Conference, and we've had some great conversations, and what you're going to be speaking about, all about hand speed. I can't wait to dive into that. But you were on the edge of Penn State campus. We were talking a little before we got on the show here, and how you have some seasonal fluctuations with the clients that come your way. But I'm curious, Penn State hand speed, I just think of Penn State football. And first, welcome to the show. And then, how many football players do you have when the school's in season?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm glad we connected. And so the program that I'll actually be presenting, or at least giving an introduction to, in Vegas next month, is called MMAFx, Mixed Martial Arts Football Cross Training, and it was developed to work with football athletes, in particular defensive linemen, linebackers, and then even wide receivers. So that originated about 10 years ago. I had a couple local high school football coaches that trained with me. They did some boxing and some kickboxing. And they'd come back to me from some clinics they were at and show this. They had a karate martial arts guy that was showing some stuff up at Penn State camps. And he showed me a video, and I was like, I'm familiar with that kind of motion and those techniques. And then I want to try to add to it by incorporating some boxing and some wrestling. And then that's how it all kind of got originated. A couple training clients that were football coaches saw the similarities in sports and movements of boxing and wrestling and football. So that started off. I started to kind of put things together. My dad was a football coach. I'm very familiar with football. So I developed that again about 10 years ago. And then fortunately, like you mentioned, I'm a block off Penn State campus. So I had a clientele right there 100 yards away. So I started stalking coaches and players. And that was back before Instagram really, or even Twitter was getting going. I was kind of Facebook messaging them. And then finally there was a connection, and a couple players came down. They had graduated, were looking to go on to the NFL, so they gave me a chance, and then from there they went back, told the coaches, and then that started a relationship with Penn State football. And then having that relationship, then I continued to train a lot of the guys. They'll come down to my gym to train, but then that kind of opened up doors. The football world, even the strength conditioning world, it's a lot of word of mouth. Who somebody you went to school with, somebody you trained with, somebody you played with. And they tell somebody about you, and it's just a revolving door, kind of like how you meet people in our world. And so coaches would tell coaches. So then at that point, I was traveling around the country to train other strength coaches and just football position coaches, the program. And then they would incorporate it with their teams and players from there. And then so I worked with numerous colleges, and then even NFL as well.
Yeah, because I hear what you're saying about getting your foot in the door, especially when it comes to high school and college coaches, and they're amazing individuals when it comes to coaching and so on, but they're really hard to get in with.
Yes.
They've got their own world, they've got their own group, and knocking on a door, more often than not, at least in my experience, the door doesn't even open. The opportunity is not going to be there. So I am really curious just to pick a little bit more into that. You say you went and you started stalking the coaches, so to speak. Like what methodology, what approach did you find to be successful? Like what did you learn from hunting them down?
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that yes, I ran into a lot of coaches especially coaches have been doing it a long time, that just because this is unique, it's different. And if coaches don't understand it or are not comfortable coaching themselves, they're going to kind of push you away. So I struggled that, this is what I do. And this is what it can do for your players. But it was a struggle at first. But eventually, as players started to engage with it, it was working for them. They felt a difference in their hand speed and their hand timing and precision. Their confidence was building. Then, it started to build a little bit more like confidence with these coaches. But it was tough to get in with some of these guys. But also on the other end, with me, I was very open-minded. It was pro bono for probably 2 or 3 years. I just wanted to work with players, work with coaches, so then I could see what was working, what they liked, how I could improve it, what I could add, what I could take out. So that really benefited me. And then I developed relationships. And once I developed these relationships and then kind of solidified the program, which is still evolving now. I was just down at Virginia Tech working with their players and coaches. And there was a couple of things that got talked about there and introduced, and we tried a few things and we added more to the program. 10 years in, we're still evolving. But it was developing those relationships, whether they bought into what I was trying to show them or they didn't. I just stayed patient and let them have some feedback and let them add to stuff. And that's really what kind of got it going, is just I developed relationships and then a trust for what I was trying to offer them. And then, so then it's been good ever since.
And the other teams that you're consulting, are they any within the same conference, or are you just, holding true to Penn State going, don't worry, guys, I'm not going to be going over to Pitt or wherever?
At first, maybe I kind of had that approach because they gave me a chance and that's who I was working with. But now the Penn State coaches have actually told other coaches. And then some of the Penn State coaches have gone other places and they brought me in. And so, no, it's just, I was concerned about that too, but no, I think it's open to anybody. And then I have to make a living. And it's all about how obviously Penn State gets the most because I'm right here and those guys can come down and do one-on-ones with me, which is, just a better, more efficient, more proficient training. As opposed to I travel to schools for 2 days, show them what it is. And then hopefully they can, I'll still work with them through Zoom or phone calls, but being there in person obviously is a much better situation. So yeah, I haven't run into any conflicts with that. No, they're all kind of share my program with all their friends.
All right. So when it comes to hand speed, what are my top priorities? What is going to get me to be at the optimal speed I'm looking to achieve?
Well, I take the approach that I'm not really necessarily increasing an individual's speed or even their power. What I'm working with is through repetition, is their timing, their rhythm, their precision. And once they start to, through repetition, get that better timing, it's like we'd say, like dancing with your hands. So it's rhythm and flow and that precision. So we have a saying that timing beats speed, precision beats power. So even if somebody's much faster, just God-given, born with speed, natural speed, if somebody else's timing is better than theirs through practice, through sparring, through repetition, generally they're going to neutralize or outdo that person that maybe is physically faster than them. So we focus on that. Precision. So a guy that might be stronger, bigger, more powerful, but if you beat him to those targets through that timing and through the precision, then you're going to neutralize or outdo that opponent as well. So that's what we really focus on, is through the timing, through the repetition, the speed, the flow, the rhythm. That then leads to the perception of speed, but not actual physical speed, though maybe it does develop that as well. But that's what we focus on. And then through that is confidence. If we have them repetition, they see it working, they feel more comfortable. Any athlete, obviously, they're more confident they are, they can always go far beyond what maybe their athletic ability is. And that's what we focus on. So, go ahead.
I'm imagining like close quarters, like hand to hand against a partner that you're just working on arm bars, arm blocks, Lower. Is that, am I in the right neighborhood?
Yeah. So what this program is basically boxing and wrestling are the core, and then there's an art called Wing Chun that Bruce Lee kind of made famous. Watch any of his movies. That's a lot of Wing Chun, among other things. And so that's what I implemented together to develop this program. And so a lot of the boxing and wrestling are great cross training for a football athlete. So that's all we're doing is taking elements from the sports that I'm familiar with, wrestling and boxing, and implementing it in an applicable way that how it would work for a football athlete. And again, the Wing Chun, which is basically limb immobilization, and in this case, arm. But the program not only focuses on, we're kind of known for developing hands, but it's also vision, working their eyes, seeing things quicker, reaction time, peripheral vision, and footwork. So again, the football athlete, especially a defensive lineman, it's eyes, hands, and feet. And that's kind of how we talk. And then if you win the hand battle, you typically win those battles up in the trenches. So that's what we focus on. But yes, we're taking 2 or 3 other sports, kind of mushing them together to train a football athlete to better improve him at his particular position. And I tell these guys all the time, everybody's lifting weights. Everybody's doing footwork, agility drills. What are they doing for their hands? And the nice thing about this, we're doing stuff with their hands to improve their timing, rhythm, speed, flow, but with sport-specific motions. So,
And you mentioned wrestling, and there's a few different forms. And I'm automatically going to Greco-Roman, just because staying on your feet, grappling, and trying to connect with the opponent's center and manipulate it. I imagine that's a component of the wrestling you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just collegiate freestyle wrestling. Well, because we're working hands, we're hand fighting a little bit there. But yes, the Greco as well, because body leverage in tight quarters. So we'll use some almost, if you say Greco kind of drills to work that in tight close range, but trying to immobilize a limb, an arm. So yes, we incorporate a little bit of Greco in some of our drills, and some of just basic collegiate freestyle wrestling. But most of the program is boxing, and then that Wing Chun element. We want to keep people's hands off us as far as the athletes. But then we get into more of the wrestling. If we do get engaged, they get their hands on us and so forth. But a lot of it is, hey, let's try to keep people's hands off of us. And we do that by mobilizing them before they get to our body. But it focuses on all 3 of those areas.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, you bring up vision, and I'm intrigued by that. You mentioned peripheral vision, also focal vision, and so on. How do you train the visual field? How do you train the visual system?
Yeah, just through repetition. So I tell people all the time that, as far as I'm concerned, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I don't think so. It's some common sense that a boxing athlete, his vision, his peripheral vision, his focus has to be, and awareness has to be better than, I think, any athlete or any sport, because the end result, if you're not on, you're getting punched in the face, you're getting hurt, you're getting knocked out. Not too many. I mean, baseball, yeah, if you don't make contact, strike out, back to the bench, let's go play another inning or whatever. But here, there's some consequences if your vision, your focus, your awareness is not at the top level as it can be, especially in competition. So we really focus on that vision through repetition of our hands and the drills, and that peripheral vision, not following your motions everywhere, just focusing on the target. I get a lot of these football guys, and every time they turn their shoulders, they're turning their head and they're looking this way, looking that way. It's like a bobblehead. Their heads just moving all over the place. And that's not best for, athletic and awareness and development of our techniques. So yeah, we focus a lot on the vision and have that timing reaction through your eyes.
And speed bags, do you guys have them? Are you looking at that hand rhythm, the speed bag that way?
Yeah, I like speed bags pretty much just for that, shoulder endurance and that rhythm. Again, learning, as I say all the time, learn how to dance with your hands. It's rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all kinds. And that guys at the highest level, if you watch them, it's about flow and rhythm. So we're trying to take guys and individuals that are brawlers and turn them into like an artist. And we do that through drilling, counting it out, flow drills, rhythm drills. And that allows them to eventually put their natural speed and power that they get in the weight room or they're born with or whatever. And then with that timing and rhythm of their hands, the vision aspect, the footwork, and then that's that well-oiled machine that we're trying to develop. So we train for perfection in the gym through our drills, knowing that everything's going to loosen up in the real sport or live action. So we really focus on attention to detail and through repetition as well.
Any surprising outcomes, like most likely beneficial, that you weren't anticipating that are like byproducts of this style of training?
Well, the biggest surprise I had, especially with training higher level athletes, is how bad they were when they came to me.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's something new, and though a higher level athlete will pick this stuff up quicker than maybe a high school athlete or something like that, but that was my biggest surprise is guys how it's focused on a football athlete is NFL guys, collegiate guys at high level sport that they're playing at the D1 level or whatever, maybe pro level, and they'd come and they'd look unathletic as heck. And it was basically because it was something new and it's very articulate, and they got to kind of start all over at a sport because really what they're doing is they're kind of learning a new sport that kind of then will cross over into their sport. So that was the biggest surprise. But yeah, once they get it, it's that flow and rhythm. And I tell guys this isn't going to take you from 2 sacks a year to 25. This is just another element. Put more tools in your toolbox. So your hand development is just as important as bench pressing 500 pounds or running a 4.340 or whatever. It's just all part of the equation, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fill in that void that a lot of these guys don't have. So, yeah, my biggest surprise is just their how they pick it up. But once they pick it up, it's then it's just how they can apply it to their particular position in sport.
And you're not exclusive to football, I imagine, although that's where the majority of your athletes are. But what other sports are you utilizing the approach with?
Yeah, well, when I've been at the NSCA conference, and I make it clear that this was developed for a football athlete, and so if you don't work with football players, and maybe not interested in but it is a unique, fun way to develop your hands for young kids. The whole martial arts self-defense aspect, so there is a self-defense element to it. So it's kind of neat, and it's good for combat athletes, whether boxers, wrestlers, or kickboxers, because again, it's hand-eye foot development. And I've even had people come to me that work with is it Alzheimer's or no, what was that? Parkinson's. So I guess some personal training coaches are doing some boxing and some hand stuff with the Parkinson's disease patients or clients, just to keep them active with their hands.
Yeah, Parkinson's, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't really looked into it too much, but I've had people at the NSCA conferences talk about that, even rugby. So yeah, I mean, again, the main development and focus of it is football athletes, but it can cross over other areas as well, especially for young people.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
Well, so Bruce, what's your background? Obviously, you've got some substantial background in MMA and so on, but give me a little origin story.
Yeah, just I did my undergraduate work here at Penn State in counseling education, and then this kind of martial arts kind of just so happened to come. The coach that I had back in the 90s, he had died prematurely of cancer when he was like 38. So at that point, he was my coach, but then I took over coaching. That's when my buddy took over ownership. And then I did the martial arts for a while, decided I was going to go back to school my whole family's in education. So I went back for school counseling, got my master's in school counseling with the idea of doing that and then coaching. But then at that point, when I was doing my school counseling, kind of like field experience internship, my advisor was this football coach that I mentioned before that had trained with me and gave me this whole idea. So we would sit around and talk about that a lot. So I got inspired more to stay in the martial arts. So I got that master's degree, never used it because I got back into the martial arts. I want to stay in it. I had this football idea. I sell a phys ed curriculum that all these ideas came when I was doing my field experience at this high school, basically. So I stuck in it, and then now the ownership and of course the football has gone pretty far as well. So.
Yeah, and so now we're in the beginning of the summer months here. This is your vacation time, or what? What do you do? Is this your program development time? How do you spend your summers, knowing that the majority of students have left campus and everything's a little quieter?
Yep. So it definitely calms down, but this is when the football starts to pick up because this MMAFx, the hand stuff, is more of it's an off-season training. So it'll pick up a little bit in like February. And then when most teams go into their spring ball, or some of the NFL guys are figuring out where they're getting drafted and how all that works, then they'll have a little kind of quiet time between March and the middle of May. Because then after, certainly at a college level, May, people are graduating, college is going on vacation, they're on recruiting. And then June, or end of May or June, it'll start to pick back up. Like right now, it's busy. And they'll go all the way till mid-July. Before they'll start getting ready into their camps, and if any NFL guys are training with me, they're going there. A couple years ago, I worked with the Giants. I was primarily there from June through mid-July because that's when most of the guys are there. So yeah, this is, even though the gym slows down a little bit, it's almost perfect timing for this, this kind of branch that I do with the football that picks up. So they kind of blend well together.
Yeah, I imagine. Now, how do you get your foot in the door with the NFL teams? From coaches that go on to other teams?
Yeah, it's just that word of mouth, and you probably know how this carousel of coaches, like they're here 2 years, then they go somewhere else, and then they're all over the place. So yeah, that's how it's happened. A lot of it all originated at Penn State, and then as these coaches started to move other places, or they had buddies they coached with at a different school, they'll tell them, and then they tell their friend. And like, I don't do much with social media. I have a presence there, but most of the places, or most of the guys who come to me, have all been through relationships and word of mouth. And a few that I know, I've sent out a newsletter, stuff like that, but majority of it is through relationships that I've developed.
Right on. And you've been with the NSCA for how long now?
That whole COVID thing just really screwed up my time. I think I started in maybe 2015 or so. And then, I did 8 to 10 state clinics or regional conferences, and then COVID hit. And then my presentations is all hands on. I can't sit there and run a PowerPoint. Nobody would get it. And I did one over COVID, a Zoom one. I think it was the Florida State, or state of Florida, and it just wasn't the same. So once COVID hit, I didn't do anything for the NSCA until now. So even when they messaged me about, I had put in for the national conference before COVID, but I just never got accepted. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they messaged me, and I was like, yes, I'll be there, and I can't wait. Because the NSCA, my experience, I'm sure yours too, it's great to show your product and help. But the biggest thing was meeting people, and everybody's so nice, whether it's the people that work for the NSCA or just all of the coaches and the trainers going there. Everybody's just looking to learn, network, meet people. And I certainly miss that, because that's what I enjoyed the most out of all those experiences. And then, so that's now I'm going to try to get back into doing some clinics and conferences, but it's kind of inspired me to get back involved with this organization, this recent national conference opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree. The networking opportunities and just hanging out with colleagues for a few days outside of your day-to-day operations is really, it's refreshing and invigorating. It just gets you going again, and you hear a whole bunch of different talks, and you just get re-inspired, reinvigorated to go back, and it's just a nice shot in the arm.
It is.
So you mentioned the guys that you work with, whether Penn State, NFL, or you mentioned some positions. And I'm thinking, yeah, O line and D line, but you said the wide receivers. And I want to go back to that. And I can see having some hand speed to break away from the cornerback that's covering them and
Yep.
running down the field. But is that what we're talking about? Or is it hand speed to grab the ball out? Or is it just everything?
No, no, it's just to get off the line. Depending on, whether it's college or NFL, however much they're allowed to put their hands on each other. So yeah, it's no different than the D line and linebackers. It's just keeping guys' hands off, your opponent's hands off of you to clear that path to where you need to go or where you want to get to. So yeah, it's just but I tell people with the drills we're doing, yes, it's focused on hand fighting and keeping people's hands off of you, but this is going to help as I mentioned, your vision, but your timing, your rhythm, even catching a ball, even punching power, because we talk about no wasted motion. The less motion you have, the less margin of error. So we really focus on just making the athlete a better athlete, more kind of trying to get to the peak of his athleticism, certainly through his hands, but full body too, with the hand-eye foot. So this, it has a certain focus of pass rush or getting off the line, but it also has a athletic development to it that can help him in other areas, whether catching the ball, whether being able to punch harder within the game. So that's why I think it's unique in a way that, as far as development of your hand-eye coordination, and because I've been to places before where they have the lights on the wall that come on and you have to work that reaction skill with your eyes and touch the light that pops up. I've seen the throw out the tennis ball off the wall and catch it, and which are all good drills. And this is unique too as well, especially for a football athlete. But as I mentioned just a little bit ago, it's a great self-defense development as well. It comes from self-defense sports or arts, as far as the Wing Chun, wrestling, and the boxing. So I think it's very versatile in different areas. But again, the specific nature of it is for the football athlete.
And how much other training conditioning elements do you bring into play, if any, like in terms of flexibility, mobility, strength? Obviously, there's coordination and speed, so we're not talking about that. But I guess endurance. Like, do you blend any of that together, or is it mainly Wing Chun, grappling, wrestling, boxing?
Yeah. So it all comes through that. And that's why I tell guys, so when I get offensive linemen, we generally just box. I show them the sport of boxing and we work boxing. And I tell them all the time, boxing is a great art or a great sport, not only for the cardiovascular development, but muscular development, muscular endurance. So with the hand fighting, I'll get guys and the boxing, these great D1 pro athletes that are in pretty good shape or really good shape and strong, but they can only box for like a minute, if that, before they're like dropping their hands and their shoulders are exhausted. So that's another element that we're developing. It's not the 500-pound bench press strength, but it's the muscle endurance where your shoulders could withstand activity for minutes after minutes. We call boxing shoulders. So we really work that muscular endurance there. Obviously, there's cardio endurance effect to this, whether the boxing or the hand fighting. The hand fighting, we focus on the technical development, but as they get better, we pick up the speed, we advance the drills where they're pretty active doing multiple techniques in one drill or in one sequence. So it has a cardio vascular element to it as well. So yeah, it's strength, maybe not as much, but again, that muscle endurance with the shoulders and the cardiovascular. Again, there is an element to that once they get to past a certain beginning stage. So yeah, I think like I said, we're trying to improve the athleticism in the athlete through the training, through specific movements.
And what about footwork? How do you, obviously through boxing and wrestling, but are there specific drills? Because your hands are only going to be as fast as your feet are, right? Yep. You're going to have this connection. So how do you incorporate that? Obviously with boxing, you've got hand speed, but you've got to develop the footwork at the same time, I imagine.
Well, and that's where with offensive linemen, we have this idea or this method or mentality that we're going to take a 300-pound offensive lineman and make him like have boxing or footwork like a 145-pound boxer. Again, offensive linemen have to sometimes get low and heavy, but pass rush, they got to be light on their feet and movement. So, we do this cross training, show them these elements from the sport of boxing, wrestling that will help them in their sport. It's then up to them to how they're going to implement it and use it within their sport. And they're good enough athletes usually that they can figure that out. But we use boxing footwork, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the boxing and the awareness and the vision. People might not, they'll watch it on TV and they just like, yeah, great, I want to see guys just knock the crap out of each other. But the boxing is very much of an art with their feet. So if your footwork isn't good as a boxer, then you're going to get hit a lot, which again defeats the point of being in a sport. So I think that the boxing footwork and the drills we do are the best they can of any sport. Because again, if you can't get out of the way of punches, you're going to hit a lot, then you're going to suffer some consequences. As opposed, obviously, basketball athletes, other athletes have great footwork, but there's more on the line for this boxing athlete. That's why footwork is so important with boxers. And again, we take that mentality and that approach to our football guys. Now, with the D-line, the hand fighting, we're looking to go forward a lot. We'll start out with lateral motion because I believe that's the simplest or least difficult footwork when you're adding hands with it. And once they get the lateral motion with their hands, then we start going at different angles and pushing forward once we have that development of their eye, hands, foot at a lateral stage. But yeah, so footwork's really important. And again, it's thought of as a hand development, but the eyes are a big part of it and the feet as well. So that's how we cook. But again, it's a lot of boxing.
Yeah. And a tremendous amount of repetitions. Yes. What about troubleshooting though, Bruce? What about you get that athlete and they're sluggish, they're not coordinated, and you're getting them going, but man, they're just not kicking in. What do you do in that regard?
Yeah, well, that's, as you can probably attest to this, is I talk about this all the time with athletes, coaches, is that's where your level of coaching comes into play. So there's some coaches out there that they can coach some NFL, NBA players. I'm not talking bad about them, but it's just like if you get a great athlete, that generally is pretty easy. The hardest thing with a great athlete sometimes is their attitude, because they think they're better than what they are and they don't listen and they don't show up on time. I'm just using, that's not everybody, but it's just, that's what I sometimes will get. It's the guys that maybe don't have that athletic ability that aren't quite getting it, and you're just like, oh my God, is it me? Is it them? But that's that patience that good coaches have. And they love teaching the fundamentals, especially the kids that don't have the best athletic ability. Now, great, we all want that stud athlete that we can help develop and see where it can go. But I think the real test of great coaching is when the guys aren't getting it, whether athletic ability or they can't focus, whatever, and then you can somehow figure out a way to make it interesting for them or to help them get it. And then you probably have had athletes before that they just don't get it. And then all of a sudden one day or 1 week, it's like, holy crap, you got it. But that's through repetition. I'm a firm believer through repetition, anybody. In my main gym, I get people from all different backgrounds. Being at Penn State, we have people from all over the world that have maybe no athletic background, no sport competition. And they're coming in for fitness or self-defense or just maybe something mentally or emotionally or socially. And they're horrible. They can barely walk and talk at the same time. But they come to class, they get the repetition, and they get good. And sometimes they're more technical than the other better athletes that maybe don't show up or get complacent or don't put the effort in or don't focus. So I'm a firm believer for repetition. We can get any individual with no matter the athletic ability to be pretty successful.
And do you have like a specific ugly duckling story without naming names? Do any of these athletes of yours come to mind that came in just like you're just covering your eyes going, oh my gosh, who are you? And then now they're all American or something.
Yeah, well, I haven't had to that level, but I've had, again, I mentioned most of my clientele for the Lombard MA business are college students, and they're focusing on being an engineer someday, or I get a lot of graduate students, PhDs, masters, A lot of smart kids. I sometimes say I might have one of the smartest gyms in the country because they're all from all over the world, the smartest that you have. But yeah, I'll get people in there, and I've had a couple of my fighters, and they're horrible. Like, they're just rigid, no rhythm, but they come to every class. And so when they come to every class and they develop, and I just had a couple. One was in engineering, just graduated. He was a successful amateur fighter. But I'll tell them after our relationship, I was like, man, when you first came to gym, you were horrible. But you came to class, you stuck with it, you repped it out, you stayed focused, and then they reached their goals or their dreams. I mean, some people just dream of being able to compete in any sport, but certainly combat sports. And then when they actually do it, it's pretty impressive. It takes a lot of work. But again, consistency and repetition and an attitude. I mean, you both probably speak of, we've had some great athletes over time, but they can't stay focused, crappy attitude. And at my age anymore, I make sure before I have anybody compete with me through the martial arts, kickboxing, boxing, mixed martial arts, that they have a great attitude, because I'm not wasting my time and energy for somebody that's just all about themselves or above the gym. So we make that really clear right away. So our competitive fighters at our gym are just good people, and that's more important to me than anything else.
Makes sense. So you're always improving yourself. You're always learning more. Where are your eyes directed now in terms of more knowledge and just being the best you can be, Bruce?
Yep.
What's out there for you?
As we talked about, dealing with certain coaches and their mentality and their closed-mindedness, I try to stay really open-minded. And every day in the gym, I'm learning. And I could be learning from that student that's, has no athletic ability at all, or from our fighters. So every day in the gym, I'm learning. I always tell my athletes, like, when you go in to train, whether it's the guys doing hand fighting or the mixed martial arts, come in with an attitude like you're in white belt and you just want to be a sponge and learn. And I try to keep that same approach. I mean, I'm kind of do as I say now as I do in certain areas. Like, I like my beer and I like pizza now and then. But as far as learning and being a good student of your sport and a great attitude, I try to do that as well. And, I'm not trying to age you, but back me growing up, we didn't have YouTube or Instagram Reels. I learn a ton off of, if I'm bored, instead of watching, Fox News or whatever, I'm going to watch study videos, because there's hundreds and thousands of coaches out there putting up stuff that maybe there's one thing that they have that sounds interesting or I can add. So I do a lot of that. I watch sports on TV all the time. So I watch boxing, I watch football, and I try to listen to the commentators and see what they're talking about. The commentators that have played the sport at the highest level. So I try to learn as much as I can through social media, YouTube, Instagram, and whatever I watch on TV. So, back in the day, it was like you had to buy a VHS tape or go to seminars and pay $150, $200 a weekend. Yeah, it was tough. But I tell guys all the time now, guys and gals, the athletes, like, you are fortunate. You have the best learning resource. You can sit on your couch and play, watch TV, play with your dog, and right there, just get on YouTube and type in what you want to learn more about, and you got it. So
yeah,
we didn't
it's
have that.
not for lack of information, that's for sure. Okay, so Bruce, how about this? I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at the calendar coming up for the NSC National Conference, but if you have, are there some speakers or talks that you're looking forward to aside from networking?
I have not looked. Generally, when I go to these, way in the past before COVID, I would get there and I'd look at the schedule and I would just try to see. I would make sure I know what time I'm going and make sure I'm ready and prepared. But I loved going around and just seeing what everybody else was talking about and seeing how they're presenting and learning from them. So I haven't looked at the schedule. I just know when I have to be there.
That's good.
Important. Yes. And 8 a.m. on Friday. But I always like going early in the morning. I like to get in there, get them fresh. especially because it's hands-on. We get them up moving. And then the rest of the day I can relax, enjoy, and then really enjoy the other speakers. Because if I'm going to like 2 or 3, then I can watch the speakers before me, but my mindset's still on like, all right, how am I prepared? Am I ready to, make sure I'm not disappointing the NSCA or any of the people coming to watch me? So I always like that first one. The one right after lunch, sometimes I'm like, because everybody eats their lunch and they're just ready to take a nap. But sometimes that hands-on one kind of gets them rolling again. But but I certainly, when I get there, I'm coming in a day early, and I'm going to try to see whoever I can, including you.
Well, yeah, make sure you bring some no-dos then.
Where are you? What day are you? Are you?
I'm presenting Wednesday afternoon and Friday morning. So end of the day, beginning of the day, kind of bookend.
Should be fun. Same focus or different? Okay.
Different. Wednesday is all about the utilization of foot wedges underneath the sole of your foot to create a better chain effect. And then Friday is actually joint mechanics and understanding pronation, or the landing on planet Earth and what every joint should do. So it's kind of, it's for me, it's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to sitting in on yours. Now, tell me this though, Bruce, MMAFx, is this a product? Is this something that if you've got coaches on the West Coast that like, oh man, that's what my linemen need, that's what the D line needs, is that something that, or do you come out, teach it, and then go on back to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, both. So I'll do clinics. I do 4 6-hour clinics that I travel typically to colleges. There are some football academies that I'll go to for weekend clinics as well. And also I have coaches, or I get a lot of dads bringing in their sons that are still in high school that will come to State College and do a weekend clinic with me, or just a day, most of them. There's that opportunity where it's hands-on, they're coming, or I'm going to universities, colleges, or whatever teams or academies. But also I have an instructional video set that I sell just for these cases where people live out in Washington, or I get a lot of messages through Twitter or whatever, even to my website. Are you going to be here? Going to be here? Especially when I was with the NSCA. Believe it or not, I had a lot of NSCA people going like, "Well, I see you were out here. Are you back here?" And I'm like, so through the NSCA, because that was a regional area, people would be aware of it through my social media, and then be like, oh, they might not be an NSCA member or whatever, but that's a way that they could see this stuff, because there's not too many people doing this type of hand fighting. And if they are, it's more, we have some karate and traditional art guys doing it, which is different than how my approach. There's more of a circular kind of approach. Mine's like an A to B straight line motion. And so it's pretty unique. So I have this instructional video set. It's 4 volumes. It's like 2 hours of material. It shows all the techniques and like 60, 70 some drills. And I do it with Anthony Zettel, who was a Penn State All-American, played in the NFL for 6 years, who's one of my best kind of athletes that I ever trained, one of the original guys. And so that's available. It's professionally done. It has slow motion and all kinds of good angles. But even since we produced that about 6 years ago. But even then, as I mentioned, the programs evolve. So if people do buy it, or I go places, I then will communicate with them, hey, we have some new drills that I will send it to them through a text message or through their email, to show them drills that we've evolved or come up with over the last 6 years since that video was produced.
Beautiful.
The video is pretty good.
And then when it comes to social media, you're on it, obviously. How can people follow you or connect with you?
So with Instagram, that is at Lombard MMA or at MMAFx, and which the MMAFx, mixed martial arts, football, X is the cross training. Twitter, the handle is at Lombard MMA, and then Facebook is the same thing, at Lombard MMA. So, and you get kind of different people in all different, like Facebook seems to be a lot of guys my age. Twitter,
our age, throw me in there.
Okay,
too.
I didn't know.
I'm there, brother. Yeah.
And
I think I've got more years than you do, but I like it.
And then Twitter is more of a lot of strength coaches, and a lot of football. And then Instagram is full of youth. Like I get a lot of, high school to, 25-year-olds, and even a lot of professional athletes as well. But so every little area I try to stay active with, because we're reaching different ages, different groups. And, but yeah, the social media, again, since we can age ourselves together, all this stuff 20 years ago, I mean, we had to sell stuff through flyers and commercials.
Yeah.
And now it's so easy. But it's competitive too.
Yeah, we just had a phone book delivered at our house a couple of weeks ago, and my kid looks down at it and says, "What's that?"
Yeah, I know,
like,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That used to be my advertising tool right there. Oh, are we in it? I don't know. Oh man, yeah. Yep, there we go. Just break out the rocking chairs. We'll be on the porch.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, crazy.
That is
well, Bruce, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate the time that you've put aside for me, and I'm looking forward to the NSCA National Conference this July 12th to the 15th in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace. And for anybody listening who has yet to register, you can do it for virtual as well as in person. Just go to nsca.com and you can follow the links there to register for the conference. And I highly recommend it. There's 4 days of learning, hands-on and lecture, and Bruce being one of them. Can't wait to see you.
No, it's going to be great. I've always been such great experiences at all the NSCA events. And then this is the ultimate one. This
Truly.
So many people, and everybody's so friendly, and they all want to learn. Presenters are all very giving and very approachable. What a great organization and great experience. And thank you for giving me the time to do this. And I can't wait to see you out there and everybody else and watch your presentation on Friday. I'm flying in Wednesday, so I won't be able to catch the Wednesday one. But definitely Friday. So,
well, that's a date then. Thank you so much.
Okay, great connecting with you, and I will see you in about 3 or 4 weeks.
So that makes a wrap for this episode of the Zealous Podcast. I want to thank Bruce for coming on, and be sure to sign up for the NSCA National Conference this summer, July 12th to the 15th. It'll be at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. However, if you can't make it in person and you got to kind of just stay where you are, don't worry, because you can do it virtually online. Just go to nsca.com. We'll see you next week.